quality corporate training meets powerful AI. Docebo is the world's first generative AI learning platform. You can customize the learning experience and create content in seconds. Learn more at docebo.com.
Danish workers leave their jobs early. Every afternoon, at around 4 p.m., the streets of Bosfair, in the suburbs of Copenhagen, are jam-packed with cars. Everyone proceeds slowly and quietly, making their way home. But just a couple of years ago, this traffic didn't exist. It's completely new. The cars all belong to the employees of Novo Nordisk as they travel back to the city. Many of the new employees for the company are foreigners, and they catch the train from the nearby station. Those stopping at Copenhagen pass by every 10 minutes, and they're always overflowing with commuters. It takes time and patience, but you get used to it. In 2020, it counted about 44,000 employees all over the world. By the end of 2024, it's expected to have over 74,000. The headquarters are here in Bosfair, with several offices and production centers, which, of course, explains all the traffic. Back in 2020, one share of Novo Nordisk was worth about 190 Danish crowns. Now it's worth 890, which is more than 470%. Just recently, the company has reached the highest capitalization in all of Europe, and this astounding performance is affecting the entire nation's economy. It has reached such a point that now the authorities are starting to separate Novo Nordisk from other Danish productions when publishing statistics, so as to have an objective view of the real economy of the country. Jens Petersen, economist of Danske Bank, says that Denmark has never seen anything like it, with just one company playing such an important role. Last year, Novo Nordisk celebrated its centennial. The recent boom comes from the side effect of one of its medications, Ozempic, a semaglutide used for the treatment of diabetes, where clinical trials showed a reduction in appetite and weight loss for patients. This side effect brought about a whole new usage, which led to the production of Wegovy, the same product as before, but marketed towards curing obesity. I am Guido Brera, and you're listening to Black Box, The Hidden Side of Finance, a podcast by Cora Media, sponsored by Docebo. For thousands of years, to be obese meant to be prosperous. Hunger was so widespread, and most people had to do back-breaking physical labor, working the fields, putting livestock to pasture, walking for miles and miles every day, marching to war in tight ranks. And then, later, with the Industrial Revolution, taking on exhausting shifts in factories. Only the rich and noble could afford to get fat. Only the wealthiest families and a few lucky others. This was the norm in the West, at least until the early 20th century. Today, it's the other way around. There are over 1 billion obese people all over the world, twice the amount of 1990 and 3 times that of 1975. According to predictions, we might reach the 2 billion mark by 2035. In 2022, the World Health Organization defined obesity as a worldwide epidemic. In the USA, 32% of adult males and 37% of adult females are obese, as well as 20% of boys between 5 and 19 years of age, and 16% of girls. Things are a little bit better in Europe, but hardly by a large margin. The percentage has doubled from 40 years ago, and it's getting worse. The situation is even affecting developing countries. And here, having a large number of obese individuals is harder to manage from a social, economic, and healthcare perspective. And it's not just about taking in too many calories and consuming too few of them. Obesity can have many causes, some of which are genetic, physiological, environmental, or psychological. It's not far from the truth when we call obesity the typical disease of affluence. It's a condition that critically raises the risk of cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, as well as tumors, and is currently the main cause of preventable death in the world. And then, as always, there are the economic consequences. According to the Global Obesity Observatory, in a publication of 2023, without a drastic change of direction, by the year 2035, obesity will cost globally $4.32 trillion a year. This is about 3% of the current GDP and is roughly equivalent to the impact of COVID in 2020. This is the extent of the issue, and here's where semaglutide-based drugs come into the picture, just like those made by Novo Nordisk, including the more recent ones based on tirzepatide. Both of these drugs simulate incretin, which are hormones that reduce blood glucose levels. The largest market for them is clearly the United States. Here, there's even been a Hollywood effect, where several stars have been celebrating these new drugs. Even Elon Musk, in his usual bombastic manner, has publicly mentioned his satisfaction when using Ozempic. It seems that the USA is ready to face its own demons, to finally tackle the dark side of its global success. And as usual, it does so in its own way, for good or for ill. Perhaps too optimistically, as is the trend in America, while ignoring the dangers swimming just under the surface, without paying attention to the individual and psychological repercussions of having a remedy at hand at all times, rather than actively striving towards a healthier diet and lifestyle. And also without paying attention to the social factors. Will these drugs be available to all? Will healthcare systems and insurance companies be able to afford them? These are the same questions that the old country of Europe has to face as well. On this podcast, we've always tried to steer clear of any form of overly enthusiastic or even religiously optimistic attitudes towards technological acceleration. Rather than celebrating the magnificent progress of our world, we're much more interested in looking at it critically with all its shadows and lights, hopes and dreams and contradictions. Still, when it comes to health, it's hard not to be cautiously optimistic, especially where medical and pharmacological development is more and more often correlated with technology. The COVID pandemic really led the way in this regard. Without the worldwide sharing of scientific information, without the essential role played by calculation systems and artificial intelligence in medical research and clinical trials, we would never have been able to produce a cure or vaccinations in such a short period, nor would we have been able to produce and distribute them on a large scale. And all this with such a heavy economic investment. This was a good thing, after all. So, what is it that we are dangerously ignoring here? One important thing: governance. The ability to have a long-term vision, to come to an agreement, globally on several levels, on the choice to make, on the side effects, and on the dangers. In the words of Italian singer-songwriter Giorgio Gaber, translated from one of his last works, we are all obese, fat and thin. We are the new paradoxes. Black Box is a Cora News podcast, produced by Cora Media and sponsored by Docebo. Written by Guido Brera with I Diavoli. Editorial supervision by Francesca Milano. Intro and sound design by Luca Micheli. Editing and post-production by Luca Micheli and Emanuele Moscatelli. Production organization by Alex Piverengo.